All right, so where we left off on Monday, or our last lesson, was talking about adolescent growth, and we focused quite a bit on Eric Erikson and debunked some of his ideals as far as the stages that occur, especially in adolescence. And we looked at James Marsh's theories on how that development might occur a little bit more succinctly, and some of those options that they have with going through that adolescent stage, right? As far as achievement and fear of failure, and that's all those stages. So today we're gonna get into a little bit more in depth as far as morals. You know, where do our morals come from? Where do your morals? Do you feel like your morals, your sense of right and wrong, where do they come from?
I think most of the morals created from culture or religion.
Right. Okay, yeah, absolutely. Our immediate society really, it's apparent from our immediate society anyway, what is a good sense of right and wrong, you know, what is good for the group and not necessarily the individual. And we learned that earlier on through our parents. And as we start to expand, you know, we talked about this up through childhood, up through about the school age. We look at parents as kind of, I'm going to use the term as gods, right? They are the ultimate power. They are the ultimate sense of what's right and wrong. They give us exactly what they want us to do. And as children, we do that. But then this growth happens. We start to fan out. We start to walk and ride our bikes and run, right? So our parents can't keep up with us anymore, and they can't be with us every second of every day. So we start to incorporate our peers' morals, and you know, we're starting to incorporate maybe another culture. Maybe our neighbors have a different religion, or our friends in school have different ideals or spirituality or something that we start to incorporate into our lives. And this cool little phenomenon happens where we start to develop our own identity, right? What do we like? What are we about? What makes us successful, and what makes us feel not successful sometimes, and how do we overcome that? These are all things that we start to incorporate. We just kind of like a big fish net. We just grab everything around us and we kind of pick and choose what works for us and what doesn't. And through that process, we start to develop morals. Now, we might look at morals as a sense of doing right or wrong, and that is very loosely translated, because what's right and wrong for me, what's right and wrong for my friends, what's right and wrong for society, what's right and wrong for the world. Okay, so we kind of just expand out as we get a little bit more in tune with that self-concept, and self-esteem helps with that. The better, the higher we view ourselves, the more comfortable. And if you remember the Harlow Monkeys, right? The more secure we feel, the more we're going to venture out and try things new and be okay with perhaps failure sometimes, right? So that's kind of the idea behind what Lawrence Kohlberg back in the right around the 1950s, 1960s, started to develop some ideas of how we develop it through the socialization. Okay. So, and that's what we're going to talk about today, is Kohlberg's stages of moral development. And you're going to be able to assess where you fall in Kohlberg's stages and how advanced your moral thinking is according to Kohlberg. Okay, so just a little bit on moral development. It's an important part of the socialization process, as I had mentioned. The term really refers to the way that people learn what society considers to be good and bad, which is important for a really smoothly functioning society, right? You know, we look at civilization as a set of boundaries and guidelines, right? Some of them are a little bit more rigid with rules, right? You can do this or you can't do that. And if you do this, there are certain consequences. And we talked about like speeding. You know, we know what the rule is, and yet many of us choose to go past that speed limit every time because it's good for us, and we kind of gauge that, is it good for society or not? So, but anyway, the rules are clear. If you speed, you get a ticket, right? But we translate that based on societal norms. But moral development really prevents people from acting on really these unchecked urges instead of considering what is right for society and good for others. So Lawrence Kohlberg, who was born in 1927 and passed away at 1987, around 1987, was interested in how people learn to decide what is right and wrong. And to understand this topic, he developed a theory of moral development that includes 3 levels: the pre-conventional, the conventional, and the obvious post-conventional stages. Okay, and this is, again, this is a very this is a stage theory and not necessarily a continuous, but he does break it down, and you can kind of see there may be ages associated with that, but as we know, people just might fall a little bit differently in that camp as far as when they achieve certain stages.
Can I ask you something?
Oh, I'm not. Yeah.
Like I am having trouble with the distinguishing morals and rules. Like you explained that the traffic speed limit, like I think it's a rule, but do we need to accept it as a like moral? Because like morality for me is kind of like if you see like old person, you need to help.
Okay.
Because like it's just like kind of moral for me, how I can distinguish between.
Okay,
it's the same thing.
Yep, that's a great question. I'm actually going to kick that out to the class. What do you think? Let's use the speed limit sign as an example. What would the rule be versus the moral? Like if, yeah, who wants to tackle that one?
Well, the rule is you don't go over that speed limit, because speed limits are there because they're the safest speed that you can drive on that road and not risk like dying as much. Like every time you get in the car, you're risking your life. But I think the morality comes in where people are like, oh, you can theoretically go between 5 and 7 miles over the speed limit. And so the morality is kind of there with like how far over or under the speed limit you're willing to go.
Is everybody there?
Hello.
Hello. Are we still here?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm here, and I
Okay.
see what you're sharing. And to me, morality is part to follow the rules. It's moral to follow the rules. Is to be the good, doing the good instead of bad. I don't know how to explain that better.
All right. Well, let me take a stab at it here. So
Okay.
rules come from society, and these are things that we've, and I'm going to say we, because in most cultures, it's a democratic process for how we decide these rules, okay? Some countries, not so much. It might be one person or a small governing body that decides these rules. But for the purposes of the United States and most Western civilizations, it's a democratic process that we deem are safe measures, right? We don't kill people, because killing people, we've adopted that as being right or wrong, but in a more philosophical and industrial sense, as a pack, as a herd animal, we as a herd, it's not good to get rid of productive members of society unnecessarily, right? So that might be one of the reasons, and you can follow whatever religion or deity you want. But for the most part, we do recognize that killing is wrong. Stealing from people is wrong, right? These are things that are counterintuitive to building a civilization and building a society. And as a people, we decided these aren't good for us. So those are where really rules come from. So at some point, going back to the discussion of the speed limit sign, somewhere somebody did a study and realized that a certain road going above a certain speed limit produces more crashes than going at another speed limit much lower. So based on that information, they create a rule. Now, we enforce those rules by having an enforcement body like police or either peace officers or police or whatever you want to call them. And they're the ones that give out consequences for breaking those rules. Now, these aren't life-altering. If you break these rules, it's not going to kill anybody or take anything from society, but it's keeping the public safe. And that's kind of where we adopt these rules as a society. Now, where morals come in is where we as individuals decide, maybe this rule doesn't apply to me for whatever reason. Maybe I can go a little bit faster. Maybe I can get to where I'm going a little bit quicker, or get ahead of the bus traffic, or whatever that may be. We're making a choice based on our needs and still trying to keep people in mind for safety. For example, is going 59 miles per hour over the speed limit, 59 miles in a 55 zone, life altering? Probably not. Now, if you're going 90, you're probably making some bad choices and going around curves that aren't safe, and you have an increased likelihood or increased factor of harming somebody, which again goes against the moral code of unnecessarily taking away lives. So I think at the very root of things, that's where rules come from. But our decision as individuals to bend those rules, that's a moral thing, or maintain those rules, right? And we'll talk about that with Kohlberg's stages of development. Is we have that the authoritative stage, where we believe that the rules are meant to be followed and never broken. But and I'm not going to say everybody, but I would say on the whole, or by and large, I think we mostly bend rules to our personal needs. Add a little extra money into our or take a little bit of money away from our taxes, so we're not paying so much, whatever that may be. And if you're not one of those people, good for you. That's a hard thing to live by, because we're always evaluating what our personal needs are. So does that clarify a little bit what
Thank you so much. Yes.
Yep. Okay. That was probably more of a long-winded explanation than you wanted.
Because I always see the rules like as a fact, and like it protects us from the danger and everything, but I didn't see the moral part, you are able to not to follow them, but I always follow them, so I didn't even think about the other way.
Okay. Well, and good for you. I mean, that's excellent that you do that. I mean, those are strong morals. And there may be a day that comes about that you may have to make a choice between what is good for you versus bending those rules a little bit. If you don't, that's great. But anyway, so let me give you this example here. This might illustrate a little bit more about what we're talking about, making some of those tough choices. And there are lots of examples out there. I like this one because it was one of the earlier ones developed by Lawrence Kolberg, and I think it really stands today. So before I say anything more, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to present what's called the Heinz Dilemma. And I'm going to read it to you, and it's a bit wordy, and I apologize about that, but I really encourage you to think about your answer to the question at the end of this paragraph. So let me read the situation to you. And if you could, just pay attention to this, excuse me, and then answer in the chat room how you would respond to this, okay? So here it is. So in Europe, a woman was near death from, I wasn't able to see it, the bottom half of it. So in Europe, a woman was near death from a special kind of cancer. There was one drug that the doctors thought might save her. It was in the form of, it was a form of radium that a druggist in the same town had recently discovered. The drug was expensive to make, but the druggist was charging 10 times what the drug cost him to make. He paid $200 for the radium and charged $2,000 for the small dose of the drug. The sick woman's husband, Heinz, went to everyone he knew to borrow money, but could only get together about $1,000, which is half of what it cost. He told the druggist that his wife was dying and asked him to sell it cheaper or let him pay later. But the druggist said, "No, I discovered the drug. I'm going to make money from it." So Heinz got desperate and broke into the man's store to steal the drug for his wife. Should the husband have done that? What is your response? What do you think?
I just saw the Andreas go. Andreas, I think.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
It's wrong regardless. I don't think the medicine should have been that expensive. And I think the drug person, the druggist, is even more in the wrong for understanding that he has medicine that could save someone's life and using that to just rip more money away from people.
Okay.
But that doesn't change the fact that what the husband did was wrong at the end of the day, even if it was for a good purpose.
Okay. Okay. So your opinion is two wrongs don't make a right.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else have an opinion? Go ahead, Semra.
I think he did the right thing.
Okay.
For me, it's like life saving is more important, and like after if the wreck is effective and the wife is like being okay, like he
Okay.
still can pay that money after later.
All right, Semra, I'm really impressed. Weren't you the one that said you follow the rules regardless?
But not about the life saving.
Okay, all right, all right. You're onto something here. Okay, you're definitely driving home a point here. Anybody else?
I just wanted to mention that, like, it's between committing a possible crime that you can pay off later and losing someone that's extremely close to you,
Mhm.
that it's preventable. In this case, I believe that I don't think I would have done anything different than him, regardless of his stealing wrong or not. Just because I would rather save someone. Like, I'm going to use an example from high school. I actually kicked a water bottle out of a machine to save my friend, and I ended up paying the school later. It was literally only $1, but I still paid them later, and everyone got mad at me because I stole. But my friend was like passed out and needed water because she
Okay.
was taking the test. So in this scenario, I also think that I don't really think I would have done anything different if I was in the same situation.
Okay, okay. So despite the risk, you chose to incur or endure the punishment, whatever that might be, to help your friend.
Yeah, I think the immorality comes in, personally for me, from the druggist who decided to charge 10 times more for this life-saving drug than it costs to make. And you see that a lot now in like the US, in the American healthcare system,
Mhm.
because like EpiPens, they're price gouging EpiPens
Yeah.
and insulin and all these things that are important to save people's lives. Like, I don't remember if this was like fiction. I think it was on Shameless, the show Shameless on Showtime,
Mhm.
where Frank Gallagher was taking people up to Canada to get insulin because it's so much less expensive there because they have more regulation there. And like, yeah, it was seedy, and like everything Frank Gallagher does is seedy and creepy. But at the same time, like, I'm not going to condemn someone for gaining access, however illegal that access is, to a medicine that's going to save someone's life when someone is putting such a hard and fast barrier to that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
believe it's amoral, or not immoral. I believe it is immoral to put such a barrier between someone being able to live, well, whether it's live their life as they would normally live it with some of these mental health medications that cost an arm and a leg, or being able to save a life like insulin or an EpiPen. That's where I believe the true immorality comes from. If you have to steal in order to get that, you're committing a crime, and you're then committing something that is doing something that is immoral. But you're doing something that is immoral because someone else is doing something that is even further immoral than what you
Right.
had to do to access that medication.
Right, right. And you
Yeah.
brought up a good point there. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Josie.
It's in couple when the CBD started, the marijuana, CBD, cannabis, whatever it's called. Sorry, it was, I don't remember if it was here in Pennsylvania or close to Pennsylvania, that he has to go through the state to find that medicine for their daughters, because the daughter was having more than 300 seizures per certain minute, and he crossed the state lines, and in that state it was illegal to use it, but he found it to control her daughter's seizures, and it works.
Mhm.
And it was another case that what you do, if it's moral or law, that she went to, I think so it was Colombia, to euthanize because she's tired to living with this sickness.
Mhm.
What is the right to do there? And the judge say no, it suspend everything. I don't agree with certain things, but if it's for the health and you're gonna have life and you're gonna be working better, then I will risk certain miles there to go through there. But if it's not gonna be for a good reason, then I follow the right
Okay.
there.
And we balance that, what's good and what's bad, right? What's and part of our pride issue, and I always say that we as humans are two things: we're lazy and we're proud, and that
Mm-hmm.
pride thing is hard to get over because we justify our actions regardless of what we see and what we know. And Andreas, I see you have your hand up. I'll get to you in a second. Has anybody watched the show Breaking Bad?
Yes.
Okay. What's
Some
your take?
parts.
What's your take on Walter White, the chemistry teacher? Is he a good guy or a bad guy?
I think it's bad.
Okay.
Are you like
Okay.
in general, you mean like for just the concept of him
Well,
you know, developing and selling drugs, or just because there's so many aspects of him that
Yeah.
sometimes are good and sometimes are
Right.
bad. And it
Intention.
he starts out better. I think that in the end he's sort of more
Oh,
hardened.
he was a wicked dude. Yeah, no, one of the things I love about watching Breaking Bad, and I watch it every year just to I binge watch it, usually around wintertime when snow is flying and roads are impassable or something like that. But I really enjoy wondering how I fell into the trap of really identifying with him, because why is he doing what he's doing? He's doing everything he's doing because he wants his kids to survive beyond him, right? And that's his justification initially. So who wouldn't do anything for their children or for their family, right? And that's kind of how they spin that. And initially you feel sorry for the guy, and then you kind of just follow along with him, and you get sucked into that psyche, that this is, I can see myself doing something very similar if it came down to my family, and justifying it in my head. Now, if you jump right in the middle of it, like season 3 or season 4, you would clearly say that is one bad dude, and he probably needs to be locked up and euthanized or whatever. But yeah, if you follow along with it, you get into that trap of just identifying with it, which is really cool. Andreas, I do got to get through these stages here. I love our conversations, but I do want to present the stage today. So Andreas, what did you have?
I was just gonna play devil's advocate for a second and just ask, like, what if it was a different situation in the sense that instead of like a big drug company that's like extorting the prices, it was like a small business owner that it cost him $1,800 to make the drug instead of $200.
Okay. So that might be a different scenario, right? And I encourage you to really consider these things when we get, and like I said, we'll walk through this and kind of delve into what kind of people in certain stages would act in certain ways. Really quick, Semra, what did you have?
Can you tell that again?
What's that?
I forget. How can I say? I couldn't listen to last part, but you said.
Of what I said?
Yes.
Regarding like if the situation was different, if it wasn't a big drug company or if it was a small drug company that Andreas had mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my only point in that is that the situation may change, but either way, depending on what stage we're in, and I'm going to cover these stages here in just a second. Depending on what stage we're in, we might think a little bit differently. Okay. So let's go through the stages here. So I encourage you to think about your response to this problem, this question with the Heinz puzzle, and importantly, think about your reasoning behind it. So it, other than giving me a yes or no, you elaborated a little bit why you think that he should have stolen, or at least if it was right for him to steal the drug for his wife, or why you think it was wrong to steal a drug for his wife. And I appreciate all your comments with that. And we're going to kind of go through the progress of how this looks like. Okay. So I put these boxes in here. So, and we're going to stage this up so it follows along what Kohlberg's moral stages of development. So this is based on Lawrence Kohlberg, who worked and who is sadly he's no longer with us. But the key thing behind the way he categorized people's moral reasoning and abilities on the basis of the response to the Heinz Dilemma is it wasn't necessarily whether they agreed or disagreed. Rather, he cared about the reasoning behind their answer. So whether you said yes, he should have stolen, or no, he shouldn't have stolen, it actually doesn't even matter. What categorizes people in different situations within his sort of categorization system are the three stages with levels within and the levels within those stages. And I'll get to all that very soon, but it depends on your reasoning behind it. So depending on your reasoning, you can be one of three stages within each stage, as I alluded to, is in two different levels in each stage. So you see the boxes on the left, and then the stages within the levels within those stages are going to be on the right. Okay, so there are 6 levels altogether, and I encourage you to think about how you would have responded to the Heinz Dilemma through each one of these 6. So I mentioned that people of all ages might progress a little bit
Sorry,
differently.
Professor, you say Gilligan?
Huh?
This going with Gilligan's the 3 stages? You're talking about the Gilligans.
No. I'm talking
No.
about Kohlberg's, Lawrence Kohlberg's. So what we have here, let me write this up. So we have stage 1 here. Within stage 1, we have level 1. And then level 2. And I'm going to go through and describe each one of these so you have a better understanding. So our next stage, so this is, I'll title these for you here. So this is pre-conventional. This is stage 2 is conventional. And then stage 3 is post-conventional. And then we'll have our level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5, and level 6. Okay. So, so what I mentioned is so Kohlberg did this with people of all ages, and you can really assess as an adult where you might find you fall in this, or your child falls in this, or if you have any adolescents in the house, or maybe it's somebody, maybe your son or nephew, and I'm using male roles on purpose, and this is one of the limitations of Kohlberg. So whatever you can tell Heinz through the Heinz Dilemma, tell them, and I encourage you to ask them and see where they think they fall on this as well. Okay, so let me walk you through the stages and levels within each stage, just to make sure we're clear. Again, you've got the 3 stages on the left, and within those stages you have the 2 levels on that, giving you a total of 6. So starting with stage 1, which is the pre-conventional morality, pre-conventional meaning sort of basic, right? So we're at the lower levels here. So level 1, the very most basic form of moral reasoning and abilities you can have, according to Kolberg, is obedience and punishment. Okay, so I'm going to write that in here. Obedience. Now, what we talked about a little bit earlier, as Semra was talking about, adhering to the rules, right? Regardless, obedience and punishment, because that's what it's about, right? Looking at obedience. So Kohlberg, obedience and punishment are for people of this very first level of morality, and it's driven by avoiding punishment. Okay, so think back to Heinz's dilemma, and maybe your own personal situation where somebody might say no, if they're again at this level, they might say, no, Heinz should not have stolen the drug for his wife because he might go to jail as the result of doing that, right? So he might be punished, and he doesn't want that, so that's a bad thing for him. So he doesn't commit that act. Okay, now I heard some of you had varying levels of morality in there. Well, what if it's a life? We're going to get to that, right? But at the very first level, and we're taught this at a very young age, right? Stealing from your kindergarten friends is bad. Hitting your sister with a stick is bad, right? We don't do those things because there are consequences to that. So we learn really early on what those are. So really, in this case, behavior is driven by avoiding punishment. And that's it. There's no selfish needs. They may want to do it, but they don't because of that, because they want to avoid punishment at all costs. Just to double check, is my screen is coming up with writing, correct? Just want to make sure.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, so the next level that we have of morality is called individual interest, okay? So as we grow, we understand that we have our own personal interests in things, right? So, oops, interest. Oops. How do I get out of this? Huh. All right, can't get to the side here. I apologize. All right, I'm gonna have to work around it. All right, so individual interests. So at this, we call it individual interest because people who are at this level of behavior is driven by self-interest. Okay, so driven by self-interest. Now, what would
Professor,
yeah.
were there we can put self-esteem too or not?
One more time.
This we can put around there self-esteem.
No, well, I don't know as though self-esteem really, because we're maybe a little bit later we can look at self-esteem, because self-esteem comes a little bit later in our lives, right? We start to
Okay.
do develop them earlier on, but we don't really have a conceptualization. We don't really incorporate our self-esteem until we start getting into that identity versus role confusion stage that we talked about, right around this age. But level two, we're still looking at a very young age, probably around preschool, getting into school age children. Okay. And again, these aren't hard and fast rules, but the level of interest, the behavior is driven by self-interest and rewards. So we get rewarded from doing certain actions. So in this case, what do you think somebody who has individual self-interest might say about the Heinz Dilemma? Well, they might say, yes, he should steal the drug because he wants to get his wife back, right? And that's in his best interest to do so. It might hurt the druggist, whatever, it's the most rewarding for him to steal the drug because he will save his wife, and that's what he wants, right? So at this level, we're not really looking at the interest of his wife or the interest of society or the interest of mankind or anything. It's what he wanted the most. So that would be self-interest in that case. All right, and I'll differentiate these as we go along here. So now we're going to move on to stage two, and the morality at this conventional level, is at the conventional level, which means that most people fall into stage two. Most people are right here in this area, in this stage. So we've already talked about pre-conventional morality. Now we're going to talk about conventional morality. So what do you think comes next? Post-conventional, right? So, and we'll get into that in just a little bit, but let me tell you about the two levels within conventional morality. So first we have interpersonal level, okay, which I'll write. Interpersonal, meaning relationships, right? Interpersonal. So what is our relationship to another person or other people, like family members or friends? Interpersonal. People at this level 3 or interpersonal, they might be thinking that essentially the behavior is driven by social approval. So we think about the Heinz Dilemma, and it could go either way. We could say, yes, he should have stolen, or no, he shouldn't have stolen. But again, the reasoning matters the most. So somebody at the level 3 morality might say, no, he should have stolen the drug, or he shouldn't steal the drug, because most people view stealing as bad. And looking at the majority of the people, right? Social acceptance in this matter. And people might look down on him for doing it. Now, we see differing cultural norms within this, because depending on whether what culture we're in, if stealing is really not accepted in certain cultures, then we're going to have somebody that's going to be more on, they could be at level 3, but they're saying no because society has deemed it wrong, and we're looking at our relationship with society and others and approval of others, okay, as opposed to what our self-interest would be. So, or they might say yes, that stealing the drug might be good, because even though stealing is bad, his wife is on the verge of dying, and that is worse, right? And I heard some of you kind of reflect that a little bit. So he should have done something about it, and people will look down for you, again, looking at social approval, look down on him for not acting in the interest of his wife. So again, it's all about social approval at this level. So that's the driving force, social approval. All right. And so you might be more familiar with this, like people who wash their hands after using the bathroom only when somebody else is in the bathroom with them. How many of you know people like that, or have kids that do that, right? Because they know that washing your hands is something that you should do, but they don't want to do it. So they only do it when they're being watched, right? I think often to even little kids in this stage, right? They, in order to avoid punishment, they act on what they want to do when people aren't looking. For example, like they might sneak a cookie or something like that, even though they know it's wrong, and even though they know it could be punishment, they still decide not to do it in front of other people because other people watching. That's level 3. I'm sorry, yeah, level 3 of the conventional stage. And if you think about that, how many of you actually go the speed limits when you know that there's a cop around the corner? Maybe you have a radar detector, or maybe there's a cop riding in the passing lane. How many of you slow down to 55, right? That would be thinking, that would be moral reasoning within the level 3 sphere right here at this level, at the interpersonal level, because you want to do what's right when you're being watched. Some people just continue doing that 59 regardless of whether there's a police officer present, right? Because they, in their mind, they're thinking, oh, he's probably not going to pull me over. Everybody else is doing the same speed. It's not going to be a problem. So that would be an example of social approval. All right. So let's move on to level 4. Level 4 is called authority. Kind of delving a little bit deeper into this. And we're still in the conventional phases of morality, but behavior is driven by obeying authority. Or authority figures. All right. And what they're doing is they're conforming, kind of taking this to the next level of conforming to social norms. So people who are in the level 4 morality here might say, you know, okay, authority, that's the government. The government says don't steal. It's legal. It's illegal to steal, and that's kind of the norm, and that's not okay. So stealing. So Heinz should not have stolen because of bigger prospects, not because he's going to get punished, not because he wants it, not because he's worried about social approval, but because, and I think I heard a couple of you talking about this, we have rules for a reason. Rules keep society safe. So anybody that says that we should follow the rules because if we break the rules, society would fall apart, you would probably fall into this level 4 of conventional morality. Okay. So let's move on to post-conventional morality. Again, post-conventional meaning not everyone really makes it to this level, according to Kolberg. So this is kind of like the cream of the crop here. So let's move on. Let's talk to level 5 first, and in the post-conventional morality. So this is where we look at social contracts. Okay. So this is where behavior is driven by a balance of social order and individual rights. So there's kind of, we recognize that there are rules for a reason, and we're balancing individual rights versus, and we're kind of seeing a lot of that in the news today, right? Especially with anti-vaccinations. Some schools are really pushing it, and some parents are pushing back and saying, no, it's our right to say what's good for our bodies. Okay, discounting what the greater cause might be. They're looking more at their self-interest in that situation, right? Or the interest of their children. So, and that's something for you to kind of think about as we go through this. And that means somebody in the social contract level might respond to the Heinz Dilemma a little bit differently. So social order, I'm sorry, yeah, let me balance of social order. I'm going to put social order balanced by individual rights. Okay. So in the Heinz Dilemma again, so social order, they might talk about how rules and regulations and laws are there for a reason. And if everybody stole and everybody committed a crime, whenever they thought that they had a reason to, or whenever they thought that they had a legitimate reason to, well, everybody would really just be committing crimes, and society would just kind of implode or self-destruct. So that's social contract. So the idea is, yes, you recognize that the individual rights exist of a person who wants the wife to live, but also the person who invented the drug, it's their right to have that drug and use it and sell it however they want to sell that, right? So that's really what social contract is looking at the higher order of society and recognizing that if everybody broke these rules, society would crumble. So how do we balance that, right? How do we say, well, I think that my rights outweigh somebody else's rights, right? And that's what we're going to kind of get into with this next level, which takes us to level 6. And there are very few people, according to Kolberg, that make it this far. And if you were thinking at this level, congratulations, you're one of the few, according to Kolberg. But universal ethics is really the what we're looking at here. Okay, and the behavior is driven by internal moral principles. So this doesn't really follow any sort of laws or cultural norms or anything. In fact, this is very, very internal. This is really, really deep stuff, according to Kolberg. And to get to this level, you do have to have a good sense of what's right and wrong, not only for you, but for your family and society, but why rules exist. So this is very philosophical in nature. So what does this mean? I have a moral principle that's wrong to steal, and I have another moral principle that people have the right to live and be healthy. So universal ethics involves weighing these two conflicts and these moral principles in this dilemma. So your reasoning would be essentially reflect the idea of, yes, it was wrong to steal. However, his wife has a right to live. Now, this is different. This is a little bit different than interpersonal, like social approval, okay? Because he's actually empathizing with his wife's right to live, doing what's right for his wife and not necessarily for him, putting himself in harm's way. And I think I heard a couple of you reflect that in some of your examples, right? But wife's right to live is far more important than the druggist's right to make money, according to Heinz, or the druggist's right to his property. That's really not, that's insignificant compared to his wife's right to live. So the importance of life is essentially at a higher level, and of the importance of property, and therefore, yes, somebody would have responded, yes, he probably should have stolen. Okay. So that's it. That's all, really all the stages. I'm going to leave this up. If you want to take a screenshot, because I do have a class activity. So if you want to take a screenshot so you can capture this, I'm going to break you off into groups. And what I would like you to do within your groups is come up with 3, it could be real life examples, and try and get a different level, one of, at least one from a different level of these 6. So you have your options, like a real life example of your child or you or somebody you work with, or maybe even a fictional character. If you want to use Breaking Bad, you're welcome to do that. So I think there are a lot of moral dilemmas in there. But I'm just curious as to what concepts you can come up with, what examples you can come up with, and how you can explain them based on these levels. And then we'll get back together as a group. Okay. Does anybody have any questions before we break off? All right, Semra, do you have a question?
I don't have the question, but I just want to add the idea with the stolen drug. Like
Okay.
When you said that stolen drug, I think is right for me, because like when I think that like life is really priceless to someone's life, and like we can, like even the society from me, if I heard it, like I will help that person to afford the drug. So like the person can lose in like short situation, he can lose the wife, and like he can still add the money, but in front of the judge, the judge will understand that person, and like maybe reduce to what is called the time in the
Sentencing.
the time in the prison, maybe 2 year to the 1 year, but this person will be met with his wife and like forever.
Right.
So like it's kind of being the what is really valuable and what is not.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something, again, looking at that balance. And when we talk about balance, that's balance of social order and individual rights, which we would probably look at like a level 5 social contract, right?
And we think we can really fix it. We can really fix someone's life, but we can fix the price of the money, or like we can afford all together.
Yeah, perhaps. All right, so I'm going to break you off into your groups. So you'll have either 2 or 3 people in your groups. So go ahead, discuss this, come up with 3 examples and how you would explain them at these levels. Okay, so try and pick 3 different levels out of the 6 and see what you come up with. All right. All right. All the rooms are open, and you should be able to see them. If you don't see them, let me know and I can send you to that room.
We back to the group.
Yeah, we're back.
Everybody back?
Yep. I
Yeah.
I was not sleeping, I promise. I was looking up. I'm not
Yeah,
a giraffe.
right.
I don't sleep standing up. All right. So how did we all do? Thanks for waking me up. So let's kind of go through these maybe by each level. And if you think your group had a good example of each level, then go ahead and let me know. And we'll just pick one, just due to time constraints, one example from each level. So let's start off with the pre-conventional and looking at level 1. What is it, and what example did you have?
Gosh, Ashfolash. I forget your name. Sorry.
Afolashade.
Ashfolash. I'm real bad for pronunciation name. Go ahead.
It's
Go ahead. You
fine.
first.
Okay, for my group, we talk about obedience and punishment. So like we both have something in common, like when we were kids, we always try to go by the rules in the house, and so we wouldn't be punished. So we are always obedient. When they say sit down there, we sit there, and when they say don't go out there, we always stick by the rules. We're always obedient just to avoid punishment.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, oops. So again, just looking at different different situations where you avoid. Did anybody have like anything specific, either that they noticed with their children or with themselves, just maybe from a past like an experience that you had?
Like the way we was, and now they do the same thing.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, just like an example of where they behave a certain way just to avoid punishment, because that's what the consequence would be.
Well, my first daughter, she always avoid that. But the second and the third, they don't care.
Okay.
They always in trouble
I
until
have an
they start.
example. Oh, sorry.
Until they start notice if I do something wrong, I will be in timeout with the things I like. So they start changing. But in the beginning, they don't. I say, don't go there, don't touch that, and they go immediately. And I will say, wait a minute. They maybe has to experience the way I experience. We always try to not let our kids do mistakes.
Okay. Right.
And
So usually,
some point I let it happen, and then I punish them. Like, no, you cannot watch TV because you don't follow what I said. Or
okay.
you will know. Example, they always go to the pantry and get whatever they want out of the hour. So I say, I don't give you permission, so you will not have a snack the rest of the day.
All right.
Things like that.
So guiding like behavior, when we look at classical conditioning, almost, that they know inherently not to do something based on what's going to, well, I guess that'd be operant conditioning, based on what's going to happen afterwards. So in that case, punishment is a very powerful tool because that really gets them almost activated when they think something bad is going to happen to them. Okay. All right. Well, good example on level 1. How about level 2? Did any groups have a good one for level 2 that they wanted to share with me?
Actually, I had one combine. Who was talking? Go, Joe.
I started talking, but you can go, Samra.
We talk about the vaccination, and like if you are in like the health provider and you don't want to get vaccine, but you are getting vaccine because like you need to work, but it's just like being in the between like getting vaccine or not the vaccine, because like you will get punishment and like you won't able to work without vaccine.
Okay, that's a great example. So getting a vaccine, it affects them at a personal level. So in their individual interest, if they get the vaccine, they might get sick from it and they won't be able to work and provide for their family. So the immediate driving force here is not being able to work, which is a fear for them. So that's a great example of individual interest. Good. How about, let's go, let me change my colors here and get a little bit of variety here. How about level 3? Who had a good example of level 3?
I can say we had a good example.
Okay.
From my country, I'm from Nigeria. So we usually have some foods we eat with our hand, like we don't use spoon, we don't use any cutlery.
Mhm.
But when we are outside, we are with people, we want to follow the normal norms. Like you don't want people to look at you like, what are you doing? So you want to use your spoon, you want to go
Okay.
along with the crowd. But when you're at home in your comfort area, you use your hand to hit some things.
Okay. Okay. Great example. So kind of like washing the hands, right? We do it.
Yeah.
Some people at this level will do it when people are watching them because that's the right thing
Yes.
to do. Okay. Good. I like it. Great example. Thank you. Thank you. All right. How about level 4? Who got a good one? That's a hard one to see. Who got a good one for level 4?
I'm actually a little bit confused about the difference between the level 3 and level 4,
Okay.
but maybe hopefully someone's example can help.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. Who has a good example of level 4? And then
We
I'll,
didn't talk about it, but I have an example about that.
all right. What do
If
you
you
have?
are in like different country and you are getting in the different country and you are trying to follow their cultural norms because you respect to them,
Okay, okay.
is that can be level 4?
I think it's, yeah, I think there's definitely some merit to that one. So,
Because you are praising society's
Is it stage
authority
4 or
authority
level
culture.
4?
Level 4.
level 4. Yeah, sorry
Level
if I
4.
said stage 4. So level 4. So cross culture. So I think what you're talking about there, maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong, is when you get into a different society or different culture that have different rules or a different way, you want to obey those rules, not because you fear punishment. Not maybe there's a little bit of self-interest, but there's definitely a little bit of social approval there. But based on your country and your experience, or your culture, or your experience, that those rules are there for a reason. They're there to guide us. They're there to keep us sound and safe, and so that way there's no pandemonium and people breaking down in society, right?
Yeah,
It's
like
like
I can give an
obedience.
example about that. Like in our culture in Turkey, we don't get into houses with our shoes. Or
Right,
like Japanese culture, the same too.
right.
But like if you like somebody from out of country and American and came in our culture and they can actually enter the house with their shoes and nobody gonna say anything. But
Okay.
like they prefer to not to wear the shoes in the house
Yeah,
when they enter it. I think
right.
it's an example.
And I think that's a great example too. And Joe, just to kind of delineate the difference between level 3 and level 4. So level 3 is interpersonal. It's driven by social approval. We want people's approval as opposed to recognizing that there is
You get it.
that rules are here to keep society safe. So somebody in level 4
Got it.
probably is not going to exceed the speed limit of 55. Okay.
Yeah.
Whereas somebody in level 3, if everybody else is speeding, they may follow
Yeah.
along with that because they don't want to be outsiders. Does that make sense?
It does. And I feel like you kind of said it a little bit when you were going over, but it seems like you could have kind of a couple levels in your decision.
Yeah, yeah,
How complicated it is, right?
absolutely.
You can have the judgment. You can have the judgment to obedience or not.
Mhm.
What I understand, the rule is when, example, my friend is Moroccan. She cannot, and Muslim, she cannot eat anything with pork. Um, I don't cook with some seasonings that I use because contain pork. But
Mhm.
my other friend, that is friend with my Moroccan friend, she don't care. And I told her, if you want to be with her and you want she be more open with you, you have to respect certain things.
Right,
It's
right.
not, it's because the way they are and they on here, it's not that I will let my moral down because I want her to raise, but I try to balance and I don't do anything with pork and she knows I don't like. Oh, it's not I don't like. I don't process quite right the spicy food, so she do it mild,
Right.
and that's the way we do it, so we can be together. Now, unfortunately, she moved,
Yeah, yeah.
but that's the one of the point I put here to understand better level 3 to level 4.
Okay, and I think that's a great example, and that person
Yeah,
was
it is.
definitely acting at
I agree.
self-interest, which might have been more of a level 2, right? For that other person. So we got a couple more minutes here. I want to get through, see what examples we have for level 5. Did anybody have anything for level 5, social contract?
We have one is being like making education free for everyone, because like it's
Okay.
good for society, and like it improves our well-being for each other. And like if the streets are safe and wise, like, or I won't be so concerned about my kids going out and like do extra things, or like my family member.
Okay. And the key word there is balance, right? Because at this level, at the level 4, we're starting to recognize that laws are in place for a reason. But at level 5, we start thinking about more of the humanistic experience. Like, what are the rights of people, the inalienable human rights for that matter? We have the right to live, we have the right to freedom, free speech, all those good things. So social contract, level 5 is kind of a balance between those things. What are our rights versus what is society telling us what's right and wrong? And we yeah, go ahead.
Can we add, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead. We, Ava and I had a scenario that kind of fit into that too.
Okay, go ahead.
Example. So we were using the show Jane the Virgin. Has anybody seen Jane the Virgin?
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it.
Highly
watched it
recommend
with
it.
I
my
see
mom.
one of the other episodes,
good.
but I'm not into it.
Okay, well, anyway, so the basic premise in the beginning, she's artificially inseminated by her doctor by mistake. She just went for like a regular exam, and she gets pregnant, and she's never had sex before. So, and she knows the couple. So she meets the couple whose baby it's supposed to be, and they really want her to have the baby and give it to them. And so she kind of has to make this decision of, is she going to give it to them, or is she going to keep this baby? And because she's decided she's definitely going to give birth to the baby. And so she ultimately ends up deciding to, keep the baby and keep the parents in the baby's life. But I think that's kind of like, I think she's kind of looking at what's the socially correct thing to do, but she's actually, which I think would be to give the baby to the parents maybe, but she's decided that, she has her own rights in this situation, and she's
Okay.
the baby.
That's really good, because you described exactly what we I put that in the wrong thing. So under social contract, again, because that's balance, right? We're looking at balance and what social norms dictate that we should do, either have our own child or give that to the parents. She kind of balanced that and said, well, why can't I do both? Breaking a label, breaking a typecast or a category that society says is normal for one or the other, saying, why can't I do both, and having a blend of both to keep everybody happy, right? Again, this is higher order stuff, so we're thinking of other people and balancing that against what society says is right and wrong. Great example. I like it. I haven't seen that show, but what's that?
I don't have time to discuss that in my group, but now seeing, in the part the husband decide to break in this store drug to get the drug for his wife. Right here he think the moral thing is to protect life more than what he's doing wrong. So I think so the protection of the life is more moral than you stolen. I don't know
Okay. Yeah.
if I said it correctly. I don't want to confuse anybody. Yeah.
No,
And this part, that's what it goes. That part that he decided to break in the store to save life instead of do the right thing. Don't do anything. But
right.
preserve life is more important than anything else. I think so.
Yeah, and we didn't get a lot of details as to why what Heinz thinking was, but we can certainly say he did act, and it sounds like he acted in one of those categories, either self-interest or social approval or individual rights, right? So, okay, great. I want to get, I know we're up on time here. If you can stick around, great. If not, I understand if you have to duck out. But let's, did anybody have a good example of level 6, universal ethics? This is a hard one. Okay, let me go back around to the vaccination. I know this is a hot topic issue, but looking at vaccination, right? Regardless of, you might talk to somebody that got the vaccination, not necessarily because of self-interest, not because that they didn't want to, that they were okay missing work or that everybody else was doing it, but they might look at getting the vaccination as a means for a higher order, looking at the bigger picture and understanding that doing so might be their part in contributing to everybody else, reducing the spread of COVID and everybody else, whether it's successful or not, right? They might put themselves in harm's way for the better good. Okay. Recycling, somebody that might be a devout recycler, it's off-putting anymore. In fact, I think anymore you have to put money into recycling your materials. I think that's right. At least where I live, I have to pay extra to recycle my recyclables instead of just throwing them out with the trash like a majority of other people doing. But looking at that, doing things in a higher order for the betterment of the world or betterment of the people on the planet, that would be stuff at level 6. And like I said, one of the downfalls or one of the pitfalls to understanding Kohlberg's stages is that it's not all encompassing. It's very based on a male population, which I think does it a lot of disservice. There are some other theories which we didn't get into today about it, but certainly think of each situation that you might fall in a different level, because we all do. Okay,
Professor.
Yeah, go ahead.
And that is in that level, we can say all the law and all the equality is going to everybody. It's like equality for everybody.
Right.
We
Yeah.
can say that and put it in that level too.
Yeah, I think so. If you're looking at the world population and what's better for the world, regardless of what's good for you and doing your part for that, I would say that's probably level 6. And it could be for different situations. I might be a level 5 in a certain area, and maybe at a level 2 in others. That it really depends on the situation, which Kolberg doesn't really do a good job of explaining as well, which is another limitation. But I know some of you have to get going. Thank you for your time. Thank you for staying over. It was a great discussion. I know a couple of you had to talk with me. If you need to, email me. I don't have a lot of time. I got to get to my class up the hill, but email me and we'll set up perhaps a time that we can meet. Other than that, have a great weekend. Be safe, and we'll see you on Monday.
Yep. See you.
Bye, thank
I
you.
keep working, and I just to check my things and put it in, but I'm working even what everything happened.
Okay, and I'm sorry to hear about the news, Josie.
Thank you. And I was yesterday in the hospital all Monday until 8 o'clock in the morning Tuesday with my aunt, and it's possible she has cancer. So
Oh my
we
God.
have, yes, it's everything there.
Yeah, you got a lot going on, but keep me posted on what's going on.
Yes, I'm doing my work because that thing helped me to sit down and read a lot. So now it's bumming in paper and through there.
Okay, all right.
Yes.